This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Two-Footed Podcast here on EPL Index. Now, before we kick things off today, I just want to share something with everybody. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Sky Bet. We've teamed up with Sky Bet because they truly understand what it means to be a fan. Sky Bet appreciates the length that people go through to support their team in all areas, whether you're a match-going fan or otherwise. And there's just no better fit for us right now than a partnership with the good folks at Sky Bet. So with that said, let's go. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Friday. It is the 23rd of August. There is 1 week left in the transfer window. If your club hasn't done the business yet, they best get cracking. My club, best get cracking. As you will have heard before this podcast began, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Sky Bet. So we're going to start with a look ahead at the Sky Bet Championship, League 1 and League 2 fixtures for this weekend. In the Championship tonight, we get Sheffield Wednesday versus Leeds United. Obviously, Leeds have had a bad start to the season and will want to rectify that. Leeds fans are approaching, I think, meltdown levels, given the sales they've made this summer. I saw one Leeds fan tweeting at Jorginho Ruder and criticising him for being a money grabber because he went to Brighton, which seems strange. But nonetheless, I still have high hopes for Leeds this season. That is the 8 p.m. game tonight. Tomorrow, we have 3 games at 12:30. They are Hull City at home to Millwall. Hull obviously lost so much of their team in the summer because a lot of them were in on loan. They also sold Philigen. They sold Greaves. It's going to be a tough year for them. I really do think it's going to be a tough year. I think they made a mistake in sacking Lee Senior. Millwall, on the other hand, they're just going to be in the Championship forever, aren't they? Like, that's just what they're going to do. They're going to stay in the Championship. They're going to finish somewhere between like 10th and 20th every single season. The odd year, they might get into the playoffs. They'll go out in the semi-final, and that'll just be it for Millwall. And then Bristol City against Coventry City. And again, Coventry, one of the teams I have real high hopes for in the Championship this year. I think Mark Robbins is an excellent manager. I think the way he's managed that club on a very, very tight budget over the years. I know they spent significant money last summer on Ellis Sims and Haji Wright and a few others, but remember, they did sell Victor Gyökeres, they sold Gus Hammer, so they're bringing in big sums for some of these players that Robbins is getting his hands on and developing them. They're loaning in well. I have hopes for them. I really want Coventry back in the Premier League. Like, of all the clubs currently not in the Premier League, they're the one I want back most. I've done a nostalgia episode on Coventry in the 90s. Highfield Road, Steve Agristovic, Ron Atkinson, Richard Shaw, Peter Undlove, Dion Dublin, Darren Huckerby, Robbie Keane, all of these things. And Gordon Strachan as manager there for a while as well. And it just one of those clubs that was just a staple in the division. You know, they obviously won the FA Cup in 1987. It's the highlight of the recent history. Well, recent history, it's 37 years ago, but you know what I mean? In the more modern history of Coventry, like, then they've had such a tough time with the whole thing over the stadium and greedy owners and financial problems, greedy stadium owners, I should say, not necessarily the owners of the club, though the club itself has been poorly run at different times. But the fact, you know, they were in League One, they were playing miles and miles from Coventry itself, and yet their fans just continue to turn up and turn up and turn up. They're a club that the fan base deserves them to be back in the Premier League after what they've been through. And I deserve them to be back in the Premier League for the bit of nostalgia. QPR against Plymouth. It's a good test for Wayne Rooney. Actually, there's 4 games. Did I say 4? Oh, this is the third game. Excuse me. This is the third game at 12:30 is QPR versus Plymouth. And like I say, it's a big test for Rooney. QPR are another club that I have great nostalgic memories of. You know, Loftus Road is still, to this day, one of my favourite grounds in the UK. But you go back to the 90s, the early days of the Premier League with Les Ferdinand and Trevor Sinclair and Kevin Gallen and Andy Peacock, and there was just a really, really good team that was there. They were a lot of fun to watch. Some very good players. Late career Ray Wilkins was there. Jerry Francis was the manager with his mullet. There was just Danny Shitu at centre-back. Just a good club. Good club. And they've got cool kits as well, and that matters to me. Watford against Derby is the first of the 3 p.m. games. Watford have just lost Yasser Espria, and frankly, I've just lost any hope that we're going to see them in the Premier League again. But they've had multiple cracks at it, frankly, with these owners. I don't want to see them again. But I'm delighted that Derby are back in the Championship after what they went through. They're another club I wouldn't mind seeing in the Premier League. I've mentioned before, my stepfather supports Man City because he grew up in the era of Lee Bell and Somerby. His brother supports Derby because he grew up in the era of Brian Clough and also Francis Lee. So for Derby, you know, and again, just good memories with them because the baseball ground, which was always just a bizarre name for a football stadium, you know, when they got Igor Stimac and players like that in the Championship, they had Daniel Sturridge's uncle Dean, who I always liked. There's just good players there. But they, for most of my life, have obviously been a lower league team. Blackburn Rovers, former Premier League champion, one of the select few who've actually won the Premier League. They take on Oxford United. Stoke City against West Brom in what can be best described, I think, as the Tony Pulis derby. Preston against Luton. Luton have also had a very poor start to life in the Championship. Sunderland against Burnley. Sunderland, I think, came into this season with hopes of promotion, but they've agreed a deal to sell Jack Clark to Ipswich, who is their best player, and that's going to make things a lot tougher. Burnley look dynamite this year. Norwich against Sheffield United. Sheffield United is an interesting one. Middlesbrough against Portsmouth. I've always had a soft spot for Borough. They used to have quite a few Irish players there. Jack Charlton managed there. You had Chris Morris. You had Curtis Fleming played there. Then obviously that wonderful team in the mid-90s when they came up and they bought Nicky Barmby. They had Craig Hignett. They brought in Janino and Emerson and Ravanelli and Festa and Branco, and they were just fun. Mikael Beck was part of that team. They got relegated, having got to cup finals. They came back up, brought more players in. It's just, they were living the Premier League dream. They were the first team, really, when they got promoted with Brian Robson's manager. They were the first team that got promoted to the Premier League, where you realised that the Premier League was just different to how football had been before. because this newly promoted team were coming up and they were spending what at the time was very big money, like 5.2 million on Nicky Barmby, I think 4.75 on Janino, 7.5 on Ravanelli, 4 million on Emerson. Like, these were big fees at the time. And they lived the dream. Like, they dared to be ambitious, and it bit them in the arse a couple of times, but I don't think they'd change it. And I still remember watching the opening game at the Riverside Stadium. And obviously they'd played, wasn't it Ayresome Park was their old ground? It was Ayresome Park. Yeah, Ayresome Park was theirs, and Roker Park was Sunderland. And I just remember watching that first game, and it's in a bit of an awkward place because it was a bit out of town and it was hard enough to get to, but just looked cool. But then a lot of clubs came along and built the same stadium. And Pompey, obviously, we all remember the Pompey team. Well, we might not all remember, but I certainly remember the Pompey team under Harry Redknapp, who did very well, won an FA Cup, and then almost went bankrupt. And that's another great group of fans down there who've really held that club together and kept it alive. And then the final game is a Sunday 3 p.m. kickoff, and that is Swansea versus Cardiff. So that's what we have in the Championship this weekend. In League One, tomorrow at 12:30, 2 games, Burton versus Stevenage and Stockport versus Bristol Rovers. At 3 p.m, it's Wycombe Rotherham, Wigan against Crawley club that close to where I used to live in England. It's a clip away from Brighton, but it was an easy one to get to from where I worked. I worked about halfway between Crawley and Brighton for most of my time living in England. And so I used to travel up and see Crawley Town often on a Friday night when they were non-league. I had some very interesting experiences there. Their fans are lively, let's just say. But Wigan this year, I came into the season hoping that they'd do well. They've got 2 lads in on loan from Liverpool, but they've started disastrously. Lincoln against Mansfield, Cambridge against Blackpool, Huddersfield against Shrewsbury. Huddersfield, another club I have a soft spot for. I love the stadium. There was good players there for a long time. Marcus Stewart obviously was one. Andy Booth was the other, came in after Stewart to replace him. They were just this Championship team that were never quite good enough to get promoted, but they always had 1 or 2 players. And then they built this stadium, which was just quite unique at the time. And they've obviously been in the Premier League in recent years, and now they've made a mess of themselves. But here they are where they are. Leighton Orient against Big Spending. Birmingham, Wrexham, who I'm going to keep an eye on all season long, against Reading, another club that have been in the Premier League. Another club that, you know, tried to be ambitious for a time and it didn't really work for them, but they got themselves into the Premier League, put themselves in financial trouble, and have never really gotten out of that financial trouble. Barnsley against Northampton. Barnsley had 1 season in the Premier League, and Neil Redfern was their best player, and then they got relegated. Charlton, another club I have a soft spot for, against Bolton, another club I have a soft spot for. Charlton, because they used to have to play their games at one time at Selhurst Park, while the Valley was getting refurbished after the report that you couldn't have standing stands anymore. They had to be all seater. I've been to Charlton a bunch, and it's a cool old stadium. It is an old stadium, but been modernised to an extent. But it has that old shape feel, old stadium feel, because of the shape of it. They've been through some horrendous times in recent years with a dreadful owner, who's thankfully long gone now at this point. But like, they've also given the world a number of very good players over the years. They've had a very good academy, a lot of good academies down there in South London. And then Bolton, obviously the Big Sam team first, actually, when they came into the Premier League, and they had Bruce Rioch. No, wasn't Bruce. It was Colin Todd and someone McFarland as co-managers. Then they had Bruce Rioch. Then he went to Arsenal. Or maybe Rioch was there first. That I'll have to look up. Bruce Rioch. Bruce Rioch. Yeah, so Rio was there 93 to 95. 92 to 95, excuse me. Then went to Arsenal. He was replaced at Bolton by Colin Todd and somebody else. Roy McFarland. Yeah. Colin Todd and Roy McFarland. They played together at Derby. They were two of Brian Clough's players. And then they got the Bolton job together. Then McFarland was sacked and Todd got sole control. And then, obviously, at a later point, Big Sam comes in. And then with Big Sam, there was just a lot of fun. But that early team had Alan Stubbs and Jason McAteer, who were two of the best young players in the country. They obviously ended up going to, one went to Liverpool, one went to Celtic and Everton. But then later on under Sam, you had the likes of JJ Okocha and Ivan Campo and Yuri Djorkaeff, and Fernando Hierro was there. And it was just a lot of good players that went through. They were all obviously at the tail end of their careers, but they brought a lot of fun to the Premier League. So that's why I have a soft spot for that. And two teams that they had. That first team that came up and had McAteer and Stubbs, and then obviously the Big Sam team. Before Big Sam became a dinosaur, I'm not really sure why he became the way he did. Where are we going next then? Oh, Exeter against Peterborough is the final game in the Sky Bet EFL League One. And then in League Two, we had one game last night. Notts County beat Grimsby Town by 4-1. Tomorrow, 12:30, Crewe versus Swindon. Crewe, I've talked about Crewe before, but there's reasons why maybe they deserve to be knocked out of the Football League. Swindon, though, Paul Sterrett is a Swindon fan, friend of mine, one of the good people that you'll find, and a great mullet. I don't know if he has the mullet anymore. I haven't seen him in many years because he lives in England with his wife and family, but he had a tremendous mullet back in the day. He didn't know he had a mullet, but he did. And then obviously Swindon were in the Premier League in the very early days, managed by Glenn Hoddle. One season got relegated, and now they just trundle away in the lower leagues. But you've got Tranmere versus Walsall, also 12:30. And then at 3 p.m, it's Chesterfield versus Salford, Doncaster against Morecambe, Barrow against Port Vale, Colchester against Harrogate, MK Dons against Carlisle, Newport County against Accrington Stanley. And again, there's one reason only to have a soft spot for them, and it's that milk ad from many years ago that a lot of people won't have seen. Bradford City against Bromley, Cheltenham against AFC Wimbledon, who I will always cheerlead for because they're a fan-led club. They rebuilt from the grassroots level up after their club got stolen from them and moved to Milton Keynes and rebranded as MK Dons and became England's first football franchise. And AFC Wimbledon was formed from the ashes left behind. And if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, everybody had a soft spot for Wimbledon. Everybody looked at them as sort of their kind of second club that they keep an eye on because they were just so different. Nobody wanted to play against them because they were horrible to play against. But the story of Wimbledon was just so incredible. There's a couple of brilliant documentaries that I highly recommend you go and watch about Wimbledon, but they were just different. Very, very different. And AFC Wimbledon are carrying on that legacy. Fleetwood against Gillingham then is the final game. And we might as well have a quick look at the National League and see what's happening there. Tonight, Dagenham and Redbridge against Halifax Town. Gateshead against Yeovil. Barnet against Southend. Solihull Moors against Braintree Town. Field against Maidenhead United. Rochdale against Forest Green. Ebbsfleet United against Woking. Sutton United against York City. Altrincham against Eastleigh. Hartlepool against Wealdstone. Boston United against Tamworth. and Aldershot Town against Oldham Athletic. And if you're as old as me, which is very, you will be as old. You'll be old enough to remember Oldham as a top flight team. Oldham were in the Premier League in the first 2 seasons. Barely survived relegation in the first season, and then were relegated in the second season, and then spent 3 years in the what we now call the Championship, finished in the bottom half in each of them, relegated in the third, then went into what we now call League One, and were there from the 1997-98 season all the way until 17-18. So that's got to be some sort of record to spend, what's that, 21, 22 seasons in the same division. That's not the top flight. That's a very, very impressive record. What's not impressive is that they only managed to make the playoffs twice and were largely in the bottom half. 13th, 20th, 14th, 15th, 9th, 5th playoffs, 15th, 19th, 10th, 6th playoffs, 8th, 10th, 16th, 17th, 16th, 19th, 15th, 15th, 17th, 17th, and then 21st and relegated. And then they spent 4 years in League Two, finishing in the bottom half in every single season, dropping into the National League. They've had 2 seasons in the National League, 12th and 10th. That, like, it's no matter what level they drop down to, they become one of the worst teams in that division almost instantly. Like, Premier League into the Championship, 18th in the second year, relegated in the third year. Into League One, 20th in the second year. 20th. You're in the Premier League in 1994, and by 1999, you're 20th in League One. And now, all these years later, they are a bottom half, well, a mid-table team in the National League. That is just what happens when dreadful owners are involved in football. Now, the hope would be that Frank Rothwell, who is a local man and is a lifelong Oldham fan, will help them get back into the Football League. That is the hope. But he is an older man. Like, I think he's 73, 74 now. They still play at Boundary Park, which is one of the great old stadiums. Was renovated in the early 2010s, but it still has that feeling of being a really old ground. Like, the outsides of the stands look dated. They're painted up, but they look dated. That club has been through a rough time. Dreadful ownership, interference from the local council on certain things, not enough help from the local council on certain things. Then the council did get involved and the owner started causing more trouble. But hopefully we see Oldham back in the Football League soon. Right, I'm going to go to break. When we come back, news and gossip, then another break, and then I'll be joined by Guy and we'll run through the Premier League fixtures for this weekend. I'll see you after this. Right, welcome back. So, lots of news going on at the moment. Brendan Rodgers says he's not interested in gossip about Hyogo Furuhashi and a potential move to Manchester City. That's a bit of an odd link, but, you know, it is what it is. Eddie Howe says he's surprised at reports that Kieran Trippier wants to leave Newcastle. Thomas Frank says that Ivan Toney's Brentford future is up in the air, which doesn't really help anybody. Fulham have followed up the signing of Sander Berge by bringing in Joachim Andersen from Crystal Palace for a fee in the region of 30 million. Bournemouth are attempting to sign Keta on loan from Chelsea. Arsenal are sending Fabio Vieira out on loan to Porto, where they signed him from 30 million, but he's going out on loan for, I would imagine, no fee. Mikel Arteta is to open contract extension talks when the transfer window shuts. No thoughts of having him win something before giving him a new contract or anything like that. Enzo Maresca says there could be problems if Chelsea can't trim their squad. You think you've got 42 players and 20 of them, by your own admittance, you don't see. Man City have confirmed the re-signing of Ilkay Gundogan from Barcelona after 12 months of a 3-year contract, which just goes to show what a mess Barcelona are in. That is all from the BBC and from David Ornstein. We'll just check in with our good friend, the spoofer with the catchphrase, and see what he's got for us. His pinned tweet is still about Ugarte. Angelo Ogbonna, formerly of West Ham, is joining Watford on a free. Nobody cares about any of this. Where did Barcelona stand on Federico Chiesa deal? I think that one could make sense on a loan. Mark Guehi on being Crystal Palace captain for the next game. It's a huge honour to be made captain of this football club. Now we look ahead to the season. So it looks like he is looking to stay, quite frankly. No buy option in the Vieira to Porto deal. Porto are trying to sell Francisco Conceição to Juventus. Not sure why Juventus want to do that, but they do. Negotiations still ongoing over Romelu Lukaku to Napoli. That has been ongoing for so long. It's actually embarrassing for all parties. Sevilla have confirmed the signing of Valentin Barco on loan from Brighton. Como have confirmed the signing of Sergio Roberto from Barcelona on a 2-year contract. Will Fish is leaving Manchester United to join Cardiff on a permanent deal. Surprised by that one. Oh, it looks like we now have deal agreed on Yasser Asprilla. Full confirmation of Yasser Asprilla to Watford. So that one's done. Like I said earlier, the Anderson one is done. How Victor has signed a new contract at Barca, probably with £1 billion buyout, which makes no sense for anybody, but Barca do it to make themselves feel good. Was it Jadon Sancho still available, if anyone wants him? And that is pretty much your lot from there. We'll do the gossip. Jude Bellingham is injured and set to miss games over the international break. He has plantar fasciitis, which I have had and is not fun. Raheem Sterling has been offered to Aston Villa, but Unai Emery is not sure if he fits into his plans. Sterling was kept in the dark about being frozen out at Chelsea and has ruled out a move to Saudi Arabia. Liverpool are set to offer 63 million and 7 in add-ons for Jared Branthwaite. I have doubts. Southampton are considering an approach for Aaron Ramsdale. They were been linked with Bijlow, Justin Bijlow, the Dutch keeper, but that seems to have gone quiet. Rishworth, lads, say it with me. Rishworth, on loan. That's all you need for the year. Arsenal are on the brink of finalising the sale of Eddie Nketiah. ESPN, you don't know how to react to that one. Leicester City are closing in on a deal for Jordan Ayew. Steve Cooper wants to bring in 2 more attacking midfielders before the transfer window closes. Norwich have emerged as surprise contenders to sign Ranier from Real Madrid, the Brazilian attacking midfielder. He's really, really talented, but it's just never really worked for him since he's moved to Europe. He came over from Flamengo to Real. Real paid, I want to say, 30 million for him when he was like 18. He's barely played for them. He had a disappointing loan with Dortmund. He went to Girona and did okay, and then he was at Frosinone last year. He played some lovely football. There were some moments where it clicked with him, especially with Matthias Sula, and they played some lovely football. They also had Valencia, who's gone to Villa this summer on loan, and they could play some really, really nice football. They were just absolutely diabolical defensively. But yeah, I'd love to see how he looks in England, even if it is in the Championship. Villa have been offered the chance to sign Samu Omoradion. I suppose that would make sense if they were selling John Duran. Tottenham and Manchester United are monitoring Andreas Christensen. Tottenham are set to allow Ashley Phillips to go to Stoke on loan. I think that all makes sense. Brighton, Real Mallorca and Real Sociedad are battling to sign Mats Hummels. And Barcelona have agreed personal terms with Federico Chiesa. Okay. Everton, AC Milan and Bayern Munich are among a number of clubs interested in Kieran Trippier. I think Everton are the team interested, and his agent is suggesting the other ones are actually interested. Brentford are poised to wrap up a 10 million deal for Brazilian winger Gustavo Nunes from Gremio. And Republic of Ireland defender John Egan is training with Burnley after leaving Sheffield United, which, I mean, Championship is absolutely the level for him now, so that's fair. And he'd be good depth in that squad. Right, that is going to do me for this part. I will be back after the break, and I will have the one and only Mr. Guy Drinkle with me, so I'll see you in a sec. Right, welcome back. So, we're joined by Guy Drinkle on a Friday. How are you, sir?
Don't ever travel via train when York races are on in the northeast.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun.
It wasn't fun.
Late night last night as well?
No. That makes it worse.
Oh, that's even worse.
It was an early start and an almost late finish, which made it worse. But yeah.
Not good. Not good. Right, we have a full slate of 10 Premier League games. No Friday night football and no Monday night football, which is a little bit disappointing. But it's a nice condensed weekend of action. 7 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. So let's get going.
Back on the normal grind, what we love to see. We start, as you mentioned, with the early kickoff at 12:30, and that's Brighton hosting Man United there. I think it's usually a fun fixture anyway, but it's almost more fun in the sense that we haven't got to see, unless you watched the 3:00 kickoff last weekend, but that was against 10 men Everton for part of it, so what do you learn from that really? But we get to see the new and exciting Brighton with 200 wingers, and we get to see Ten Hag maybe implement his football after 17 years and 600 billion spent.
Yeah, Eric Ten Hag loves to spend a lot of money and then complain that he doesn't have the players to play how he wants to play. Now, this weekend, United have no Euro, no Malacia, no Fish, no Lindelof, no Shaw, no Højlund. But Sancho is fit, and it looks like Harry Maguire should be fine to play as well. But maybe with a doubt over Maguire, maybe Matthias de Ligt gets to start. You'd have to assume that Josh Zirkzee, having scored last weekend off the bench to beat Fulham, maybe he gets to start as well. As you said with Brighton, they look like they're going to be a ton of fun this weekend, or this season, but you know, there are question marks because it's a new manager. They have a lot of wingers. They did beat United in Ten Hag's first match in charge a few years ago, and they've generally done pretty well against United. But still no Solly March, still no Bart Verbruggen, which is a big one. Evan Ferguson, Julio Enciso, Purvis Estupiñán, and Tariq Lamptey probably all a week away. Igor Julio is out. But Minta should be fine to play, and Brehan Gruda should be fine to play. So those are, you know, Minta was really good against Everton, but like you said, it was Everton. So what can you really take from it?
Have they bought the Turkish left back yet?
Hadiaglu, I don't believe that deal is done yet, but certainly looks like one that gets done. They are also trying to sign Matty O'Reilly from Celtic.
Yeah,
as he is clearly pushing for a move, and at 23, I think he's an ideal age profile for Brighton. Get him there for a couple of years, and then they'd be looking to sell him at a profit. I do like the idea of an O'Reilly-Wiefer midfield pairing. And they're obviously looking to sell Billy Gilmore. They didn't get Dewsbury Hall. So it would make sense to go and get a player like O'Reilly. What that would mean for Carlos Baliba, I don't know. Maybe he just becomes a rotation player and they just slow down his development a little bit.
He's still young.
He's still very young. I think he's still 19, actually. So they can take a longer-term view with him. But yeah, I mean, look, everything's shining brightly at Brighton at the moment. I still have major concerns about that defence. The group of centre-backs doesn't fill me with confidence. But if Van Hecke takes a step forward this year, if Lewis Dunk, if last year wasn't him in decline and was just a bad season, and maybe he bounces back, and if Igor Julio comes back fit and healthy and fits into this back three, maybe then it starts to look a bit better. Although they did play more of a back four against Everton. But maybe then things start to look a bit brighter for them. But the attack is outrageous. Like, they're loaded in attack. It's silly how many good attacking players they have. And I think we'll see under this manager, as opposed to the Zerbi, more of a phasing out of some of the older players who just, quite frankly, aren't good enough anymore, like your James Milner. Now, Danny Welbeck played and scored last weekend. Probably one of the easiest goals he'll ever get, as he ran, 30 yards with nobody making a tackle and then just lashed in the corner. Fair play to him, but somebody make a tackle. Somebody step out of defence. You're allowed to not just defend your 18-yard box, lads. So yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot to like about Brighton. United, though, I mean, they won their first game. They have been aggressive in the transfer market. Don't necessarily like much of the business that they've done, but I can see the logic behind some of it. They do look like they're closing in on getting a deal done for Ugarte, and I really like him as a player. I just don't like the fit of him and any of their other midfielders as a two, except for Casemiro. Because I think you could sit Casemiro in midfield and just let him dictate play and have Ugarte run here, there, and everywhere, winning the ball back, and that's fine. I think that works. I don't like the idea of him and Mainu as a pair. So I'm not sure which of them is picking the ball up off the centre-backs and playing it forward. Mainu's a good dribbler from deep. He's not a great passer from deep. Certainly not yet. I think he'll get there. But yeah, I mean, look, the big question is going to be Ten Hag all year long. And we'll see what happens. I think Brighton win this game, though. At home, I'm going 3-1 Brighton.
Yeah, I think there'll certainly be goals in this anyway you look at the game. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how these two sides develop in the season. And you'd probably say the same about the next two teams, and that's Palace against West Ham. Both sides who shown signs last week without overly exciting. I know Palace will probably feel aggrieved by the referee, and rightfully so, you'd say. But West Ham, a very difficult game against Aston Villa, even though it was at the Olympic Stadium. But it's an interesting fixture.
It is. It's what I'm really looking forward to. I think it might be. It's probably the pick of the 3 p.m. games. Now, there's a couple of teams I want to see more than them. But I think in terms of the matchup and how I think these are quite close in where I place them in a league table, I think this is a really interesting one. You've got Palace, obviously, who lost Michael Olise, and there's still a lot of talk around whether they'll keep Mark Guehi. There's a lot of talk around Joachim Andersen and what happens with him. Are they going to make a couple of signings? Because obviously I think they would have to. Andersen's done, isn't it? That deal is done.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I think that's been confirmed today.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a big loss for them. That's a very good player. So that creates a big question mark at centre-back. But it does look like actually Maxence Lacroix is coming in to replace Andersen. And I actually think that can be an upgrade for them. Now, he needs to shake off the last year or so, because he wasn't great last year for Wolfsburg, but Wolfsburg were dreadful.
But he was good under Glasner, wasn't he?
Brilliant under Glasner when Glasner was at Wolfsburg. He was I really wanted us to get him at the time to have as a rotation option with Ibu. I think that's a really good get for them. And if they're selling Anderson for 30 and getting Lacroix in for, I think, 14...
Yeah, I think
that's great business. Now we'll see what happens if they lose Guehi. Where do they go? Would they go Chalobah, potentially? Would they go Joe Gomez? That might be just a bit too expensive for their taste.
Well, they're linked with Sterling as well, so that's a lot of money, even if it's a cheap fee. It'll be a big wage if they get Sterling.
A big wage to get Raheem. A big wage. I struggle to see Raheem going to Palace. I really do. I think he will believe he's a Champions League player still. But, it might be a thing that he goes there on loan rather than a permanent, even though I think it's clear that he wants a permanent move away from Chelsea and Chelsea would like to sell him.
If West Ham hadn't signed like Somerville, etc., I think it would have been. Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, perfect. That would have been a brilliant fit. But look, I think Palace are certainly at this point a club that you'd enjoy going to play for. When you look at the players they have in Eze and Wharton, they're two players that, as an attacking player like Raheem, a final third player, they're going to get you the ball in dangerous situations and create opportunities for you. You know that they're going to be well organised, well coached, because they've got Glasner, who's excellent. So, yeah, I think that's, all things considered, this can still turn out to be a very positive window for them, even if they lose Elise and Guehi. Anderson's neither here nor there. He wasn't one of their sort of big money players that they were banking on bringing in huge fees. He wasn't in the class of Elise, Eze, Wharton, Doucouré, or Guehi. He's kind of the next one behind that. And like I say,
$5 million,
that's the thing, and that's a profit on what they paid. And I think they're potentially getting a better centre-back in Maxence Lacroix as well. So, yeah, and they've got Shadi Riyad in the door this summer as well. You've got Chris Richards there. Chalobah would make sense maybe as the centre-back, because I don't think they'll pay the fee for Gomez. But, yeah, I think Palace are in a good place. Like, they've got a really good manager. There's some very good players there. They seem to scout really well, and I think we'll see a lot more from Daichi Kamada as the season goes on than we did in the first game. We'll see more from Ismail Assar. West Ham spent big this summer, and very aggressive in going out to improve their team. In the wake of David Moyes' departure, I'm not as high on it as a lot of people are. Like, I've seen people put them in the top 4.
Yeah,
for me, I think they're more kind of competing for 7th. That's kind of where I put the ceiling on them, because I expect them to lose Paqueta. I assume he's going to get banned. We're still waiting to hear what happens there. I think the only reason he's still at the club is because that's hanging over him. And the only reason Kudus is still there is because they couldn't afford to lose both of them at once. So Kudus, they were either going to keep if they sold Paqueta, or if Paqueta's getting banned, they're going to have to keep him anyway. So there's a lot of talent there. I have question marks over the fit of some of it. I'm curious to see how the midfield does this year, what it looks like in central midfield, because there's talk of that Edson Alvarez is available for sale, which would surprise me, because they paid pretty big money to get him last summer, and he was pretty good, but he wasn't but he wasn't like we need a defensive midfielder at Liverpool. But none of us were looking at him and going, oh yeah, he's the fella we should go and get. No? And like, if you're at West Ham and you're not going to one of those top clubs, what's the point in leaving? Like, you're at a pretty big club, they play in a big stadium, you live in London, you're on good money, you'll be in Europe every odd season maybe, if things go well. Where are you going to go that's going to be as good or better? Maybe it's lifestyle, you'd like to go to Spain or somewhere.
Yeah, I suppose you're gambling on some, I don't know, like an Atalanta or something like that to get more in Europe, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And again, lifestyle comes into that, because obviously we're against London. London's got more to do, but I think the Italian lifestyle suits a lot of players more. So maybe he goes abroad, or not abroad for him, but abroad from the way we look at things with the English league as the kind of centric league. I still think there's some work to do there at West Ham. I still think the left back situation is weak, but they've been busy this summer. I think this is a good game. Palace are at home. I'm going to give Palace the nod. I'll go 2-1.
Yeah, Mateta had his week off. He's scoring 5 in this one. On to Fulham against Leicester, Dave. I mean, we mentioned it there. Anderson will be a big signing for Fulham because Calvin Bassey did an air swing last week, and that was fantastic. And Leicester kind of got battered for a half, but then showed they somewhat belong in the Premier League. Maybe it's more Spurs falling off than Leicester improving. That only time will tell with that, I suppose. But it's an interesting game from the fact that Fulham didn't threaten too much. They messed up the last pass against United a lot, whereas Leicester have a hitman up front in Jamie Vardy, so that might be the difference there.
That is the difference for me, is that Leicester have a guy that they can rely on to get them goals. Now, I really like Rodrigo Muniz. I think he is going to be a very, very good number 9, but he's not yet proven he can get you goals. And Fulham are still light in multiple areas after this summer window. Now, they've obviously got time, but we'll see what they do from here on. Alderson coming in, I assume he partners Bassey, so Diop drops out of the team. Like you said, Bassey, that air kick was just... you just don't see that happen to professional footballers.
Not in Premier League, no.
But when you're in school or whatever, and you're playing, you might play, I don't know if your schools were the same as ours, right? But in primary school, so our classes go junior infants, senior infants, and then first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, right? And there's in our school, there was 2 classes for each year. So at lunchtime, every day, my class would play the other class from our year. And generally it'd be 7 or 8 or 9 aside, but sometimes you might get that they want to play 11 aside. And there might not be 11 people that can really play football in the class. So you'll get like 1 or 2 lads who normally wouldn't play, but they'd play for the crack or play because their mates were playing. But they wouldn't be able, they'd be uncoordinated and just be kicking air the whole time. You couldn't put them in goal because it was vital to have a good goalkeeper to stop the other team scoring. Otherwise, they'd be shooting from everywhere and it'd just end up in a mess. So you'd end up with, like, one of them would play centre-back and the other one you'd stick out on the left wing or something. And you just wouldn't pass to him. But the fellow playing centre-back would be in the thick of it. And he'd be air swinging at everything and jumping up in the air and just clattering into people. And that's what Calvin Bassey looked like. He looked like the fella who was only picked to play because he turned up to watch his mates play and they were 1 short. Because the other centre-back got drunk the night before and didn't come to the game. That's what it looked like.
He's a very strange player, isn't he?
And then at times you watch him, though, and he's brilliant. You watch him play sometimes and he just looks really good and composed. But that was atrocious. But Anderson should help him. Anderson's a calming head and a good vocal leader. So
Sander Berg in front as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got Sander Berg into midfield. That helps them there. They still have work to do, but it's coming together. They're putting together a solid mid-table team. Leicester, like, Fulham have no injuries this weekend, and Leicester aren't missing anyone that would start, I don't think. Stolishik, Daka, Cody, and Luke Thomas. I don't think any of them start. So they'll be heavily reliant on Vardy. They've got pace on the wings. They're signing...
Batchwell looked excellent, by the way.
He did, didn't he? He really did look like a player that's not going to be at Leicester for a whole lot of time. It might be one to keep an eye on him.
Well, we were linked.
We were before he went to Sporting. when he was coming out of Ghana, we were linked to him, and then
it was weird, wasn't it? We signed him 4 times, apparently.
Yeah, and then somehow he was playing for Sporting. And then there was like rumours he's actually there on loan. No, he's not. Talking about. But yeah, he does look a player. I think Mavididi, when he gets back into the team, he's a good player too. You've got Buenanote. Now, he didn't have a great game against Spurs, but he's got talent.
Tough game, to be fair.
Very tough game, because his first half especially, he had none of the ball. That won't be a problem against Fulham. Fulham are not as good as Spurs. They don't keep the ball as well. And they're a bit slower than Spurs. Like, Spurs leave themselves more wide open, but they've got a Doigi and Poro and Van de Ven that can kind of cover for playing that high. If you get Fulham advanced and knock the ball behind them, there isn't a ton of pace there. So that could be an area for Fulham, for Leicester to exploit. We know Jamie Vardy's made his career doing that. I'm going to go for the draw here, though. I just think with Fulham being at home, you have to give them kind of a bit more respect. I'll go 1-1.
Yeah, I could see that. Moving on then, we have City hosting Ipswich. I suppose the question is, Dave, can Ipswich continue that first half performance against Liverpool but take it away from home? I suppose it's easier to do that against the big sides, because as a team, this is why you get promoted, is to play the Man City of this world. Do you think they can replicate that? And then on the flip side of that, will Man City just be able to play through that pressure, or will it be like Liverpool, just weigh it out a bit?
I do wonder if they might be better off playing more like they did in the second half, which was to sit off a bit, but with the energy they had in the first half, where they close off passing lanes a lot quicker and don't make it as easy to be played through. Because I think if they go to the Etihad and try and take the game to City, they do risk getting absolutely annihilated, because it's City, and you've got like the ultimate cheat code in De Bruyne to Haaland.
And Gundogan.
Gundogan's back as well. Now, look, Ipswich have Armando Broja in now that they didn't have last weekend. They have Jens Cahoust in they didn't have last weekend. And they've got Jack Clark coming in, but I don't think it'll be done in time.
That's a good signing.
That's a really good signing. I think that's a really smart bit of business. Now you've got him and Hutchinson on the wings, and maybe you go Delap and Broja up front and play big and aggressive.
All the meat, I like it.
That could be quite interesting. Calvin Phillips obviously can't play because this is his parent club.
Pepper will love him at play.
Oh yeah, Pepper's probably right in the Premier League. Let him play. It's fine. Let him play. No Muric. Donasian is out. Cameron Humphreys is fit. Wes Burns went off against Liverpool. He's out. Nathan Broadhead is out. George Hurst is out, and Harry Clark is out. City, what if they got injury-wise? No Oscar Bob. No Rodrigo again. Or Rodri, as we actually call him. And Savinho is a bit of a doubt, but should be okay. Now, look, it's City at home. I'll go 3-1. I'll go 3-1.
Yeah, that's a quick one we can go to. It'll be interesting to see Ipswich against an away side, I suppose. But Southampton hosting Forest, Dave. I mean, Southampton could have had the perfect start last week, and you've obviously discussed it on the pods throughout the week. They should have beat Newcastle with the amount of shots and chances they had. And then to follow that up with a home game against Forest, it could have genuinely been a brilliant start for them, but it just raised so many questions about the potential goal scoring in the club, whereas Forest, I actually can't remember what their result was last week.
They drew 1-1 with Bournemouth and should have beaten them.
Yes.
Should have beaten them.
Yes.
Do you know? Like, that's the thing. This was an opportunity for both clubs to have a great start, because with the way the Bournemouth game played out, Forest should have won it, even with the horrendous injury to Danilo. Obviously, he'll miss out this weekend, but it does look like Aina and Alanga should be okay. But as you said, the way the Southampton-Newcastle game played out, Southampton should have won that game, and instead they just made a mess of things. And the goal that they gave up was entirely their own fault. Now, they have no Basunu. He's going to be out till like February. Sulemana, Ross Stewart, Adam Lallana, and Juan Larios are all in contention to be fit, but My guess is Larios is probably a bit further away because they're only playing him in the under 21s now and limiting his minutes. The others might make the bench. Both of these teams still have bits and pieces to do this summer, but Forest have upgraded their left back, bringing in Moreno on loan from Villa, which just gives them more natural balance. And I am curious to see if the manager goes to a back three, which obviously he did for a long time at Wolves.
It would suit. I mean, Nico Williams and Moreno as wing-backs is fun.
And that's much better than them as fullbacks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you could go Oma Bamidele, Milinkovic, and Murillo as a back three. You get all three of your best centre-backs on the pitch. And I think that balance should work.
You know he's picking Willy Bolly.
Of course he's picking Willy Bolly. Of course he is. Now, in midfield, you've just lost your best midfielder, but Sangaré played well last week, so maybe him and Ryan Yates. And then Gibbs White as a 10, and then, whichever pairing up front. It looks like they might get Nketiah. Won't be there for this weekend, but, we'll see if that deal comes off.
In a back three, could you play Gibbs White next to Sangaré? It's a bit of a waste, but...
You could. I mean, you could, because you'd have more solidity behind them.
Maybe not against every side, obviously.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Against the bad teams, but I mean, the issue for them is they're one of
the bad team.
Yeah. But I think you could play a midfield. If you were to go back three wing backs and then go, let's say, Gibbs White, Sangaré, and Elliot Anderson. So you've got two attack-minded midfielders in there, one holder, but both of those attack-minded ones do work hard. They won't let you down in terms of tracking back and doing the off-ball stuff. That could work really well. And then you go, say, Awoniyi, and if he does land Nketiah, that's a good starting 11 until Danilo comes back. And then you can just readjust it from there. I don't know.
It's tough because they've bought a lot of wingers as well. It's a weird balance.
That's the thing. No Alanga, no Hudson-Odoi. They are good players. And they should be starting. So it is tough to know. I don't like the manager is the truth of it. So I don't really know what he's going to do.
Signing, I know they need more goals, but signing Nketiah, is he? I know Awoniyi has a lot of injury problems, but...
See, I'd have just pushed harder for Santiago Jimenez from Feyenoord. Just because I think the fit is better. Like, he offers a lot more in all-round play than Nketiah, who's more of a poacher type. And he can get involved in the build-up, but it's not where he's good. I like Jimenez. I like what he can do to bring others into the game. But I suppose when you've got Hudson-Odoi and Alanga and Gibbs White, if you're playing 4-2-3-1 and they're the three behind, you are going to create chances. So maybe that's where you want the more poacher type like Eddie Nketiah. But Eddie Nketiah is not in any way proven that he can score regularly in the Premier League. And part of that is he hasn't had a whole ton of opportunities. But let's not forget, he's 25 now. He's not a kid anymore. And he's got 19 Premier League goals. His career high is 5. He
didn't even show it in the Championship when he went to... Was it...
No, he 3 goals in 17 games.
Yeah.
He's got 44 in 188.
It's a big gamble.
It's a big gamble for that type of money. It is a big gamble for that type of money. Do you know what else is mad is that, he's never shown that he's good enough in the Premier League on any kind of consistent basis, and yet he has been capped by England. Now, again, I think he's good. Yeah, he won cap 2023. He was capped once.
David, me. That's David Nugent stuff.
Who did he play against? He made his debut coming on as a 73rd minute sub in a 1-0 win over Australia in a friendly.
That's a pub quiz answer, that.
Yeah.
David, me. The more you know.
I'm going to go the draw here. I'll go 1-1.
Yeah, a 0-0 wouldn't surprise me either, because neither of these do shoot it.
Fairness, yeah.
But it could probably say the same about these two and all. Spurs against Everton. And Solanke's missing, which I presume would mean Richarlison doing Richarlison things against his ex-club. Which might mean he just goes on a tear. He's a narrative type of footballer. But what do you make of this game? Spurs, should be hanging their heads in shame, not winning last weekend, and Everton, almost the same. I know they went down to 10 men eventually, but God, they just looked clueless how to deal with Minter in that first half.
They had no clue. And you look at they're missing a whole bunch of players now as well. No Chermetti, no Patterson, no Brantwaite, no Garner, no Coleman. Ashley Young suspended, that actually helps them. No Dele Alli. And a doubt over Tarkowski, which maybe means O'Brien comes in for his debut next to Michael Keane, which is grim.
Oh, that's bullying.
And have you seen they've been linked with Kieran Trippier?
I was going to ask, yeah. Of course he's 50-year-old. Of course he's
He played under Dyche at Burnley. So yeah. I suppose there is that connection there. But you can't be going into a season with 5 fullbacks and 3 of them being Seamus Coleman, Ashley Young and Kieran Trippier. That's just atrocious. The Ev looked so far from a Premier League team last weekend, it was actually embarrassing. Now, Spurs looked great in the first half and garbage in the second half. Like you said, no Solanke. Bentancur also out, and he'd started the last game. Fraser Forster is a doubt, but he's the backup keeper, so who cares? Yves Bissouma is back. I wonder, does he come straight back in after being suspended internally? And then Pedro Porro is fit to play, so he should be fine to go right back. Spurs are home and Spurs have to get themselves going because the league won't hang around for them. They've got to win this game. I'm going to back them to win, just largely because I do believe in Spurs and I also think Everton are just a mess. So I'll go 2-1 Spurs because, like you say, Richarlison may well be the 9 and that doesn't fill you with confidence.
Yeah, Spurs end up on this weekend 4 points behind any of the other big teams. It's not going to be great.
No.
On to the late kickoff then on Sky for the UK people. First, probably competitive big game because, City against Chelsea wasn't really competitive on paper at least. Is Villa hosting Arsenal, Dave? It's obviously the fixture that kind of ruined Arsenal's title.
Twice.
Yeah, I know they had the Fulham slip up and those stuff like that, but getting the double done by Aston Villa is not. Villa are obviously a good team, but if you're going for the title, can't really have the double against anyone, really. But anyway, what do you make of this game? It's kind of hard to tell because it's early on, but it's going to be a nice early test, and if Villa can get Watkins up to speed, we saw how he troubled the back line last year. But at the same time, Duran, it's going to be a fun season for him.
He looked good against West Ham, didn't he?
Yeah.
They came on he does this. He's got, and remember he came on against us last year as well. And he just caused absolute chaos.
Just a rocket launcher left foot as well.
He's an interesting player. I do like him. He's a bit mental. He reminds me of Darwin. He's like a left-footed Darwin. So Villa, no Boubacar Kamara, no Tyron Mings. So they're both out. So that's fair enough. Arsenal, no Tierney, wouldn't play anyway. No Tomiyasu. And a doubt over Fabio Vieira, but who cares?
I think I just read he's going back to Porto. Let me have a look. I think
that would
make sense. Literally just tweeted that.
Is that a loan or a permanent?
Let me look. Porto agreed deal to re-sign Fabio Vieira on loan from Arsenal. Not in squad for Villa game as Porto finalised to bring back midfield.
He's also got some other breaking news here that Bournemouth are working on a deal to sign Kepa.
Yes, they want to play with 10 men. Fair enough. Is he better than Neto?
No. Well,
and Neto's
I suppose potentially he is. At his best, he definitely is. So it would be a loan that they would take him in on. They also did look at Ramsdale, who was obviously there before, but looks like he'll go to Wolves.
Someone buy Kelleher, please. Someone has to buy Kelleher. This is just bullying at this point.
Moreno's obviously expected to get finalised today to Arsenal, and this Nwaneri, is that his name? Nwaneri? The young kid?
Yeah.
So it looks like Fabio Vieira, we can add him to the list of Mikel Arteta and Edu flops, but Yeah, I mean, Arsenal didn't look great against Wolves, but they looked very comfortable against Wolves. Like, they never really had to kick through the gears. At the same time,
Saka and Odegaard look great against Wolves, which is all you need, really.
That's it. But that's what they have in attack, is they've got those two. Wolves did cause them one or two problems defensively. Like, Wolves should have scored one. It would have entirely been Saliba's fault. They made a mess of it.
Was that the Cunha one where he just P-rolled it to the keeper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they should have scored one. Villa carry a much greater attacking threat. They're better managed. They're better set up. They've got a lot more good players. I like the Villa physicality to stand up to Arsenal in midfield. Now, less so with Yuri Tielemans in there, because he's painfully slow. But Onana can hold his own against the likes of Rice and Partey. It's a tough game for both. It's a tough game for Arsenal this early in the season. But I don't fancy them to lose. I'm not sure I fancy them to go there and win. They will be bang up for this one, though, because they all know that Villa and Fulham are basically the teams that cost them the league last year. They took 1 point from the 4 games against those two teams.
Ooh.
And that'll annoy them. I think they're the only two teams that they didn't beat last year in the league, in one game or the other. So I will go for a draw. I'll go 2-2. I think it'll be a good game.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. Another one, I think this could be a good game as well, is Bournemouth against Newcastle. Both teams play quite good football. Bournemouth, we could potentially see the debut of Evan Nilsson, is that how you pronounce it? Which I think could help. I really like Semenyo, but I think he's better from the wing. But that's a good front line if Evan Nilsson settles in and does what he did in Portugal.
Yeah, especially as the Premier League won't be up to speed on how to stop him at this point, coming into the league. No Unal, no Tyler Adams, no David Brooks, but Senesi is back, so that's a plus. But I don't think he gets in the team because the two centre-backs, Zabarni and Huijsen, played really well last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
The Toon, though, I mean, talk about being in a bit of bother early in the season. No Botman, no Lascelles, no Miley, no Schär, no Tonali, and no Wilson.
They're going to have to do it, aren't they? They're going to have to play two lefties.
They're probably going to have to play two lefties. Do they even have? Yeah, they're going to have to play Lloyd Kelly and Dan Burn.
Yeah. Which disgusts me.
With Livermount and Hall as the fullbacks.
Ugh. So
one right footer in the back four. You love to see it.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Bournemouth were a bit disappointing in the opening day, but look, it's the opening day. But there was plenty of promising signs for them in terms of how they fought back to get that point.
I think they looked better when Christie came on. I think he may not be the biggest name, but he just makes them tick, doesn't he?
Whereas the Toon, I mean, I don't even know how you judge that game from a Newcastle perspective. They had 22 or 24% of the ball at home. I know they only had 10 men, but I don't care. There's no excuse for only having that much of the ball at home against Southampton. If it was Man City, I'd be like, oh, fair enough then, that's okay. But it was Southampton, and you got battered. And I saw people talk about an Eddie Howe defensive masterpiece. They got destroyed. It was only just bad finishing and good goalkeeping that saved Newcastle. I think Newcastle are going to lose this. I'm going to go Bournemouth to win 2-0.
Yeah, 15-0. Can't back two lefties. It's disgusting. Wolves against Chelsea, Dave.
This won't be fun.
I don't know. What do you say? Chelsea had a game midweek, obviously. And
they went 2-0?
2-0, I think, yeah. And Mark Gui? How we pronounce that? With the worst miss you'll ever see.
Striker. Yeah.
The worst miss you've ever seen. Yeah.
It was atrocious. It was absolutely atrocious. And then he missed the follow-up as well. The follow-up was at least a good save. The first one, my good God, he'll never get an easier chance to score in his life.
Yeah, that miss should send him straight on loan to a La Liga team.
It might. There's still time.
Yeah, that's true.
No Reece James, obviously.
Of course.
And potentially no Cole Palmer, who was limping at the end of the game, grasping at his hamstring. Without him, I don't even know where Chelsea would have finished last season, but my guess is bottom half. I don't know. This isn't a game that excites me at all. Now, Wolves, no Semedo, no Enzo Gonzalez, no Chouameni, and no Kalasic. I'm not looking forward to this one. I really am not looking forward to this one. Wolves, I mean, like I say, they caused Arsenal a couple of problems, but without Cunha on the pitch, they just don't look like a football team. They just kind of boot it along and hope for the best. With Cunha there, things start to link together a bit better. They need to get more locked in defensively, be sharper. Someone needs to have a word with Yerson Mosquera and tell him what is and is not acceptable on the field of play after some of his behaviour.
He didn't get sent off his son's safe.
It's unbelievable. I don't know how he wasn't red carded. Gabriel Jesus must have been wondering what on earth was going on.
Havertz was ready to scrap for it.
Oh yeah, Havertz was ready to go. Yeah. And Mosquera kill him as well, which is funny.
Well, that's fake. Well, he did. He chokeslammed him.
How was he not said that? Oh my god! And they didn't even it's not even like a thing where there's been any retrospective action about it. Just like, oh yeah, that's what happened.
Just chokeslamming and groping lads for no reason.
I don't fancy Chelsea to win this.
No.
I'm going to go with the draw. That Chelsea defence just, like, the way they set up, I think plays into how Wolves want to play with Cunha and Hwang and their pace in behind. So I'm going to go for a draw. I'll go 1-1.
Yeah, last game then, Liverpool hosting Brentford. Liverpool obviously had a game of two halves, cliche. Whereas Brentford, I think nobody really fancied them against Palace. Maybe that was more to do with Palace than Brentford, but last season Brentford were very, very stale for most part of it. Obviously much bigger test at Liverpool. Again, I think we mentioned it last week, Liverpool just have to kind of win these games if they are to achieve whatever their target is. It should be to attempt the league, but who knows? Who knows with the club? It's a very weird time to be a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool have one doubt over Jarrell Quansah, but there's a good chance he's fit by Sunday. If it was a Saturday game, I'd say he'd be ruled out, but by Sunday, I think he'd be fine to make the bench. Brentford, no De Silva, no Igor Thiago, likely no Ivan Toney, but then even more important, no fullbacks, because Hickey and Henry are both still out. So we're probably going to see Roerslev at right back and maybe Christopher Ayer at left back against Mo Salah. Now, I really like Christopher Ayer. He was at Celtic. He's a good player. He's a centre-back who can play a little bit at right back. He is not a left back. And Mo Salah will absolutely torture him. I think Liverpool are going to hammer them. I don't like this Brentford team all that much. There's good players there. I just think it's gone stale. I think there's been a lot of signings made that just haven't worked out for them. As I've been over this before, if you look at the players they've signed for 8 million or more since getting promoted, the only one who is a surefire hit is Johan Wissa. And all the rest, it's either like, well, they've been okay, but they've gotten injured, or they've flat out just been bad. That's not great. And like, you see the team that started at the weekend, Flecken in goal. I mean, he's not as good as Raya, and I'm not a huge Raya fan, but he's not as good. Roerslev, who's mediocre at best, and Ayer out of position. You had Ethan Pinnock, who not that long ago was playing League One, I think. Might have been League Two. Was then in the Championship, obviously, with Brentford, and has been up with them. Nathan Collins, who's coming off a very uneven season last year. The same midfield three that they had in the Championship, who are all good players and they work really well together. But still, it's been together a long time and has gone a little bit flat. And then in attack, Sade, who I like, is talented but hasn't shown it for them and gets hurt too regularly. And Bomo's a good player. This is a good player. But it's still a lot of players that were in the Championship with them. Like 4 of the starters were in the Championship with them. Roerslev was in the Championship with them. They haven't upgraded well enough. They haven't built their squad well enough. I don't expect Carvalho or Van den Berg to start this game. And I'm going to pick Liverpool to win 4-0.
Hopefully so. And that was our last game.
And there we go. That will do us for the week. I will be back on Monday. So thank you as always for listening. And of course, today's podcast was brought to you by our friends at Sky Bet. Please remember that to use Sky Bet, you have to be 18 years of age or over. And if you're unsure about gambling, do visit begambleaware.org. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.